Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Free stuff for Americans. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Senator Bernie Sanders drawing big crowds like this one in Boston, telling folks America should give them freebies. Sanders, of course, the nation's only socialist senator. And because old Bernie's doing so well with the entitlement line, we now have Hillary Clinton getting on the train.
Every young person who wants to go to college, number one, should be able to go to a community college for free. That's 2 more years of education on top of high school. I support President Obama's proposal for doing that, but I want to go further. I think everyone who goes to a public college or university should be able to do that without having to borrow a penny to pay tuition.
Wow. Mrs. Clinton says her proposal for essentially free college tuition would cost an average of $35 billion a year. Talking Points believes that figure is from the land of Oz. It costs far more than that, although I admit my opinion is speculation. What is not speculation is what Bernie Sanders wants to do. Free Medicare for all Americans costs $15 trillion over 10 years. An increase in Social Security payments costs $1.2 trillion. Guaranteed family leave costs $319 billion. Tuition-free schools at all levels costs $750 billion. Rebuilding the nation's infrastructure costs $1 trillion. Preventing private companies from cutting pensions costs $29 billion to the federal government. The freebies and programs Senator Sanders supports would cost the American taxpayer $18 trillion over a decade. Obviously, that's not fiscally possible, unless the federal government begins seizing private assets, which is certainly in line with the socialist philosophy. On the other side, Governor Jeb Bush recently said this about courting African-American voters.
We should make that case because our message is one of hope and aspiration. It isn't one of division and get in line and we'll take care of you with free stuff. Our message is one that is uplifting, that says you can achieve earned success. We're on your side. Things can get better.
Of course, the liberal press derided Mr. Bush for using the words free stuff. But it is free stuff that the Democratic Party is promising in each and every election. That's what the party stands for these days, entitlements. And many Americans are buying into that, somehow believing the U.S. government owes them prosperity. So with Hillary Clinton now imitating Bernie Sanders, the country faces a very interesting scenario. Capitalism versus socialism. We'll see what prevails. And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction. Joining us from Washington, Kirsten Powers. So free college tuition, Kirsten, do you favor that?
Well, in theory, I think it would be wonderful. The problem is that we do have this completely out of control deficit. So right now, I think it would be difficult to pull off. But yeah, I think it should be a goal, absolutely, because you want to have broad access to higher education. I think we're ending up with an almost sort of class system now where only certain people can afford to go to college, and it's becoming it's so onerous now for people with the debt that they're burdened with when they come out is just overwhelming.
Okay, so if you're going to go to Harvard, that's true, but if you're going to stay in the state system, it isn't true. Community colleges are very reasonable. Their costs are very reasonable. State tuition, even in New York, I mean, it's a bit, but it's not punitive.
I think it's I think the state colleges actually are a lot more expensive than they used to be. Certainly when I was going to college, and for somebody who comes from a family who doesn't have money, it can be prohibitive. And to take out have that amount of debt when you come out, especially into an economy that doesn't have a lot of great paying jobs, I think it's a real burden to put on just certain people, and then other people don't have that same burden.
I think that the argument can be made that, and millions of Americans have done it, that you can get a good education, but you must work for it. And there's a lot of scholarship money available here in New York City. Poor minority students who perform well can get free college tuition, and that's the case in a lot of places. But to demand free college for all Americans on the community college and state college level will bankrupt the nation. It is an astronomical expense, astronomical. I think there's a middle ground that could happen. But the overarch is, from Bernie Sanders in particular, and Hillary's only doing this because Sanders is kicking her butt in the polls in some states. The overarch is, look, we're going to give you everything. You saw the rundown of Sanders, $18 trillion? Come on. I mean, this is insane. But yet some Americans, and that's what my next question is to you, why do they think they're owed all this by the government? What is that mentality? I don't get that. I never took a penny from the government.
It's not this idea that, so Democrats believe that people are entitled to certain things. They're entitled to health care. They're entitled to food. They're entitled to some basic necessities of life.
Free.
What you call free stuff and what Jeb Bush calls free stuff that actually are necessities in life. So the problem with when he said free stuff is that he's talking about children getting food. He's talking about people who, a lot of the people who receive welfare, even the adults, are working poor. They're people who have jobs, but they don't have enough money to get
that
food.
Myth has been busted time and time and time again.
It's not a myth.
If you look at the studies of poverty,
at least 50% are working.
If you look at the studies of poverty, most poor people in this country have computers, have big screen TVs, have cars, have air conditioning. This myth that there are kids who don't have anything to eat is a total lie. And
it is absolutely not a lie.
It is absolutely a total lie on a mass level.
There are kids in New York City who go all weekend without anything to eat except when they eat in the schools.
That is such a biggest baloney. You produce one. You produce one.
I know. I know that because of the churches that I've worked with in New York City who serve those children. I mean,
there are food banks in these churches, and it goes back to the parents who are usually derelicts of some kind,
I'm sorry,
and who squander the food stamps that come in, who sell them on the black market. This is insane. You're telling me that you believe in the United States of America, with all the entitlement programs and food stamps and everything else, there are urchins running around that don't have any food because of the system?
There are children.
No, it's their parents who are abusing them.
They're children, and there are people. Being poor is not abuse. Actually, being poor is not child abuse. And there are people who actually work very hard and who still cannot make enough money to make ends meet and have enough food for their children. And I'm sorry that you refuse to believe that.
The entitlement culture that we have in place. The entitlement culture we have in place, public housing, food stamps, direct payments, all kinds of things have wiped that out. It's only if you abuse the system by not using the food stamps for food that happens. That's not what happens. There are people who legitimately are having a difficult time getting by. It's very we're obviously not going to agree on this. I'm going by the stats, Powers. They have jobs. At least 50% of these people have jobs. I challenge you, and you can come on any night, to bring in here a family, all right, who can't feed their children, and I will put them on the air. You find one. Okay. All right. Kirsten Powers, everybody. Next on the rundown.